Hey there, how are you today? I am working on a bird tutorial today. One of my go-to things. I haven't done a bird in a while. Feeling the need to do another bird. Yeah, when I was doing these tutorials for my students in illustration class, these were my bird demos. So this is my go-to tutorial. I've done the most of these over the years. So I should be able to pull this off. I have some sort of I don't know, what is that, an oriole or something? I'll have to check to see what kind of bird this is. I'm not quite sure what it is. And the cool thing is I can take a picture of it and Google will actually tell me what type of bird it is. So anyway, that's what we're going to do today. It shouldn't be a long tutorial. I'll try to make it quick. I'm aiming for a low edit tutorial. So here we go. Alright, so we're going to get this watercolor started by mixing up a couple of colors, mainly blue. And we'll start with the background in various colors of blue. So I have phthalo blue, some ultramarine blue, and even some of that indigo blue that I'm mixing together just to get a big puddle that I can start applying and working our first stage, which is color blocking. I'm mixing in a little burnt umber to get that grayish blue, and I'm just going to work around wet on dry, varying my strokes, changing directions to get a mottled color palette background. It's not terribly saturated, but it does have some pretty good bits of color in it with some modulation. I'm doing a live edge on the sides, and I'll mix up and change colors as I work my way around. I'm working my way down to the branch. Again, burnt siennas, burnt umbers, and blues to create those variations in color. So it's a very narrow color palette. And I do want a sharp edge on the bird, which is why I'm painting wet on dry. And then I'll come in, jump in underneath the branch, around the feet, and get that saturated color up at the top underneath the branch, and then come in with a water mixture, make some quick deft strokes for a live edge at the bottom. And this is definitely stage one, color blocking, just getting color onto the paper, assigning the colors to the appropriate locations depending upon the subject matter. And I thought this was an oriole, but it's actually a robin that I'm painting. And I may or may not include a reference photo. I had a printout that I worked from, and I have yet to find the actual digital file that I printed for this. All right, so mixing up the burnt sienna for the branch. And while that's wet, I'll drop in some blues, let those colors mix. I'm protecting and keeping the colors separate from the background because there is a highlight edge on both the top and the bottom of that branch that the bird is sitting on. And as soon as that's done, I'm going to start adding in a range of colors on the body of the bird with the notion of the shapes that those colors create on the bird and the feathers and just the overall base color. Again, I'm just knocking down the whites of the paper and just establishing generalized color shapes. I am working with a 3/4 inch flat brush, just bouncing around the bird, popping in the local colors. I like the flat brush. I can get a wide variety of strokes. I've switched over to a round. I'm going to drop in the colors for the robin's primary color on the breast. And as soon as I'm done color blocking, we're ready for stage 2, where we'll start adding more detail, saturation, and really bring this bird to life. Alright, the paper is bone dry. We are ready for stage 2. I'm mixing up fairly thick mixture of the dark ultramarine and either sepia, burnt umber, or burnt sienna to get that warm, dark, blackish color. And that's the color that I begin painting the eyes and the beaks and any of the darker areas with. And I'll work my way around on the bird with various intensities of that black or blue or even oranges on the body of the bird to start defining the outer edges, the feet, the details, and then I'll come back over, bounce back over, and maybe resaturate and find some of the more intense colors. There's going to be more intense colors on the yellow area, which will become more orangish and more reddish as I glaze in some other colors. But right now, just building some structure on the feet, finding edges, and starting to define some of the feather structure, some of the deepest, darkest recesses, or the type of layering and patterning that happens with the feathers. So I'm going to bounce around, add that kind of structure, that drawing, and I'm drawing with a number 2 or number 1 round brush with varying intensities of that blue brown mixture, and I'm essentially drawing. I'm drawing the feather structure and creating a little more of the feather feel that I can work with later on. I'm softening some of those edges that I just drew, and I just switched over to a quick stroke for tone in a color, softening edges and defining some of the structure around the eye, around the head, atop the head. Making directional marks on top of those feathers to give an indication of the direction that they are curving. Now just blocking in some more color into the certain areas. It was too light, so I needed to add a little more of the blues. Kind of an undertone of blue. Right up underneath that yellow. And then I'm back to a darker, thicker paint. And again, I'm painting edges, definition. It's a broken line, it's not a solid outline. The lines are angular, they vary in thickness. Okay. Adding that structural definition on the feathers in the tail with a lighter, thinner color. Now I'm going to get some browns, working on the feet, switching over to some cool colors. So the feet are wet, and I can use those 2 different colors, and they'll blend together where I overlap them. Thin mixture of the yellowish, orangish color for the breast, even more orange. So I'm bouncing around from glazing color to adding detail, intensifying, saturating. There it is. There's a greenish color that was on top of the bird in the photograph. And we're creating form, essentially, with all these glazes, all that detail, all the directions, the directions I make the marks, all little touches. It's just creating form, textures. Now starting to work a little bit on the branch, the shadow side of it, with that really dark color. Remember, when you're painting trees and branches, keep everything very angular. So as I was working on the branch, some of the areas on the bird had dried. Now I can bounce back into the bird and continue the definition. You're going to see some irregular marks on the branch. You're going to see some cross contour marks where the strokes I make are going around the form of the branch. Putting in a nice blue glaze on the areas of the bird, trying to retain some of the lighter blue glaze to give the indication of a highlight. So in real time, this bird took about 40 minutes to paint. And as I'm closing in on the back end of all the detail and structure work, I'm going to come in and add some additional glazing in the background. And I'll even come in at the very back of this piece with some of the Pro White, touch up, capture some of the highlights I may have lost. I've done a pretty good job at retaining highlights along the edge of the branch, the bottom edge of the bird. That top edge, there's a nice highlight that I protected. There's a couple spots that I think it's going to need a few touches. And you can really see when you get to that point in the painting, when you're really painting in the last touches, that's the contrast is really starting to make the bird separate from the background, adding some of that purple for a change. Here's some violet color that I'm adding into the browns of the branch, adding it into some of the areas of the background. It's wet on dry, and then I'll feather it out. Putting a little bit of that color right against that white tuft of feathers on the rump, and it really makes it pop. And then back to the structure. Painting lines, finding shadows. Just touching up. Again, this is all texture work. A little more contrast in the darkest areas, defining some feathers, creases, and a nice deep glaze on those two shapes. I've had like 3 layers of blue glazes on that. I'm still trying to protect the highlights on the one side. So all the color work is now done, and I've switched over to painting with Pro White. It's a thick opaque white, and I'm just going to bounce around the bird and recapture all the highlights that I think should be where they're at. And around the eyes, some separation on feathers, a little more details on the feet, and just give a little more punch overall to the final piece. And we are done. Hey, if you like this tutorial, give me a like and a subscribe. Drop me some comments too. I really do appreciate it, and I really do appreciate that you're watching these tutorials. and I really do hope that you're getting a lot out of them. So go grab yourself some bird photos, sit down with your watercolors, and start painting. Birds are easy, they're fun, and they're very forgiving. I'll see you guys in the next tutorial.